Hello there, YouTube, and welcome to Monday's edition of The Breakfast Club. I'm Got That Funk. I want to thank you for joining me. Also want to thank Ginger Greek for bringing up this week's round-robin discussion topic, asking, what we think should be done to stem the rise of violent jihadism around the world. And obviously I've spoken on The Breakfast Club to some degree about this issue already, so we can take it as read, though I think we should re-examine our foreign policy, and I'm not going to belabor that point too much because I've already gone into it at some length here before. But I really do believe that if we're going to stem the rise of violent jihadism, you can't ever prevent it. But if you want to stem the rise of it, I think definitely withdrawing from an awful lot of our foreign interventions would be a good way to step in the right direction. For example, Donald Trump has just recently committed to extending our tour indefinitely in Afghanistan after nearly 16 years in the country. And I have to ask, at what point do you decide that the benefits are outweighed by the downsides? Surely we've already passed that point. What do we hope to accomplish that we can't accomplish in 16 years? Why is 17 years going to work when 16 didn't? It just doesn't make sense to me at this point. So I think just as an example, that is one. And if you think, Afghanistan's got nothing to do with ISIS and therefore violent jihadism isn't a problem, our actions in Afghanistan don't create part of or contribute to the problem, let me ask you this: do you think extending the tour in Afghanistan is going to do anything to stem the rise of violent jihadism? Do you think us being there for longer is going to make it easier or harder for people to recruit to want to fight against us? I'll just leave that question to you. One thing I did want to say, which no one seems to talk about as regards to this problem, is the media. And I did want to go into this at more length at some future stage. But right now, one thing I just want to bring up, which I'll examine more fully in the future, is this. From my point of view, the media, whether by design or not, accidentally probably, abets international jihadism by the way that they report on it. For example, when the attack happened a week or so ago in Barcelona and that maniac drove into dozens and dozens of people, tourist crowds in Barcelona, and he killed a few dozen people and wounded like 100 other people, and before they even caught him, ISIS had claimed responsibility for the attack. That's how the press reported it. And here's my problem with that. How do we know that? That's awfully soon. If you haven't even caught the guy yet, what's your evidence for him being under instruction by ISIS to carry out that attack? And I would submit that if he wasn't under instruction by ISIS to carry out that attack, or an attack of some kind, if they had not been in direct contact with each other, ISIS shouldn't even be allowed to declare that they have responsibility for the attack. Once you give them that responsibility, you inflate their importance. You make them look more powerful than they actually are. If they're not actually directing some of these terrorist attacks, but just claiming responsibility for them because the people who commit them happen to be Muslim, whether or not they agree with some sort of shared philosophy or not, if there's no direction, if there's no order being followed, or no contact between these parties, I don't think we should be giving ISIS the elevated profile of saying that they're responsible for all these attacks, when it's really an ideology that is responsible, not actual people giving orders. And that being the case, we need to talk about the problematic ideology, and I've already discussed that here in the Breakfast Club to some degree as well. So there's that. But yeah, let's get the press to be a bit more ethical, I suppose. They need to scrutinize more how they report this issue. Another thing, the press blatantly glorifies our military interventionism to such a degree that I think it makes it easier for people trying to recruit others into the jihadist cause. When you look at just the way that the hype goes into, like when Trump dropped a few bombs way back in the day in Afghanistan, and one of the reporters on MSNBC, I think it was, said that he was finally presidential and that the bombs going off were a beautiful thing to behold and all this kind of stuff. That just reeks of propaganda to me anyway, and also it just like I say, I think it makes it a lot easier for people trying to recruit our enemies into their own cause. So I think the press has to take a hard look at itself and realize that hyperbole and making everything seem fantastic and dramatic and everything like that actually aids the terrorist cause. They should be as dry as fuck when they report about terrorism, and terrorism should be reported as a crime, not as an act of war. And that's the final thing I want to say about it in this video. There's other things Gigi asked in this video, but I want to leave that for other people to address. But one thing that I've noticed, when I first came to this country in 1989, the IRA was extremely active, bombing either here or in the on the Irish mainland. 2 or 3 times a year there would be bombs going off back in the late 80s and early 90s, including an attack on the Prime Minister's residence in downtown London. They fired a mortar directly into the backyard of Downing Street while the cabinet was in session. We're talking military-grade explosives in the capital city of the country, okay? And yet, the British people weren't encouraged to fear all Irish people, or be suspicious of travelers from Ireland. So I find the reaction, both in the media and in the political classes, to be a little bit hyperbolic as regards dealing with this issue in general. I think we need to turn the heat down. And one thing the British authorities refused to do back in the day was to refer to the IRA as freedom fighters. They didn't want them to have that status. They were criminals. They were mass murdering thugs, and that's how they ought to be dealt with and referred to, as mass murdering thugs. Whatever political agenda they espouse, once you decide that you're going to use violence and intimidation to achieve a political agenda, you become a terrorist, and therefore you can't be negotiated with until you decide to put your arms down and come to the table in an honest way and have a battle of ideas. And that's ultimately the only way we're ever going to get around this problem. Sooner or later, people are going to have to come to the table and thrash this out without fighting. But I think people are just going to keep throwing blood and treasure at it until they're exhausted of both. And hopefully by then it won't be too late for us to stop it. But at some point, negotiations will have to take place. You can't kill everybody who possesses an ideology, because if you kill someone, you make an enemy of their entire tribe. Okay, so keep that in mind. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I look forward to any and all comments in the comment section, and of course I look forward to Ginger Greek's wrap-up of the other responses and what he has to say on this subject in his video on Friday. I really wanted to talk about the situation in prisons in this video as well, but I've already gone on longer than I wanted to, so I'll look forward to seeing what Gigi has to say on Friday about that. Right, so Sister Danger, I hope, is here tomorrow on The Breakfast Club, and Nathan Brendan Masters, I'm pretty sure, will be back this week on Wednesday, and I'll see you again next week on Monday. Until then, thanks for watching, and may all your ups and downs be ups.